Hello and welcome to another Lord of the Rings Rise to War video. I'm the player who plays as the King Under the Mountain, and today I am going to be doing my final season update review of this season. You will see there's not long left on the timer. This will get released a little bit later on when there's even less time on the timer. But I mean, where do you start with this season? I mean, we're going to go through... I've made some gear changes. I've found what's potentially an OP troop, which I'm quite happy with. Admittedly, I did kind of steal it from someone called Dalco from Lame, who kind of was using it against me, and I thought, actually, this looks really good. So I'm going to show that. I have made some gear switches. I'm going to show that. I'm going to show what I've done in regards to command helms and things like that, I think, as well, which is quite important. I'll go through the merit boards. I'll go through the map. I'll try and touch briefly on the drama of the last day. And I won't go into too much detail on that because I don't think it's very fair, but I will touch on the drama just very briefly. And then we'll probably zoom in on Dol Guldur and see what's going on. But I mean, it's, we're going to start with the map because I think we'll go from there to Dol Guldur, and then while I'm marching somewhere, we can probably start talking about things. So here is the map. Thankfully, all this is still a dark blue colour. It nearly wasn't. There was some serious drama last night, and that was all based around the fact that Lame took the ring from Bear and Honk. Then someone took it upon themselves. I'm not going to mention any names. They obviously weren't very happy, but the leader of gods dropped all the captains and people like that, and actually tried to drop from the Lame and God's kingdom. Not ideal with 24 hours left in a season just after you've taken the ring, but I'm not going to go any further into that because that got cancelled. Everything calmed down. Everyone went back to normal. So it's all good. Except Honk have currently lost the ring to Lame and Gods. This is the Honk Bear Kingdom. You will see there are some pins down here between Bear and Nikki. You will see another one down there between Bear and Nikki. You will see pins over here between DMDS and Order. There's lots of little pins around the edge of the map. Food, Roma, Gods and Gods, Crows and Gods. There's lots of small things going on and unaffiliated, but the real action's happening in the middle of this map. Now, the small pin in the Undeeps, which I think has been calming down a little bit. This was yesterday when things got a little bit heated between those two. There is a 2.8 million pin, which is mainly Gods, to be honest, over here. Gods on top of the pin. Good on you, Gods. Well done, Gods, can I just say? Because I think beyond who actually owns the Fellowship, I think they've actually come together as a really cool team, and I think they will stay together and do okay. So it's nice to see that they've been involved, definitely deserving what they've worked for. And the main pin is this one here. 75.2 million participants. 27.7 million deaths. And the T4 loving Lame are top of that pin. Honk a second, Toby third, Order fourth, Bear fifth. They've got Gods and a little bit of food. That's a serious pin, and it's been going on and on and on and on. And it's been a little bit back and forth, don't get me wrong. Last night, with all the drama around Lame taking the ring, we actually managed to push through a little bit. I'm probably going to zoom in on Amon Lank now. And hope I don't reveal anything that's a pin, but I don't think pins are going to matter at this stage anyway, to be perfectly honest. So, this is where my fort is. And I am not full, so it's a good job I didn't press send. My fort is happily called Drama, because that's what was going on last night when we got here. We do currently own a Fellowship fortress at Amon Lank. Whether we can actually get to use it is a different thing, because we are currently being completely hammered by Bear Honk and also Gods and Lame from both sides. We're defending as well as we can, I think, in this scenario. And it's kind of like a case of you pick your side and you try and defend, and then you pull back out of it again afterwards. So I am going to go to here. And there we go. So that's kind of where we're at in Amon Lank. there is no more fighting between Lame and Honk and Bear at this stage, to be honest. What basically happened was, if we go back a couple of days, because I think that's probably the easiest way to do it, if I just zoom out a little bit. So, without pressing on pins, that's never a good thing. Probably zoomed out too far there. So, here we go. Sorry for anyone who saw any pins there, but hey. So, actually, I've just realised my fort's being cut off here. Probably need to do something about that. Basically, what happened was we tried to push the Lame Fortress through this top crossing, and Bear and Honk actually tried to cut us completely out of Dol Guldur. So what happened the next day was we had to focus on Lame and Honk, and Lame, and if they've played really well for the last week or so, kind of just left us to it, to be perfectly honest. And once they'd left us to it, they kind of just slowly crept up around the ring, and as we pushed Honk and Bear out at the bottom side of Dol Guldur, they snuck in, and then basically took the ring while it was unopposed, really, and created all sorts of drama, like I say, with people trying to drop Kingdom and things like that. But that was that. So that's kind of the map situation. If I'm being brutally honest, I think Lame will keep the ring. With this short time left, Honk getting a fortress up, which is successful, is going to be pretty slim. Us, I don't get me wrong, I think they'll try. Us getting the ring at this stage would be a monumental effort, considering the amount of barracks that's already been spent today trying to hold this entire position. So that's kind of where we're at with the map and the season. It's so nice to see that all three of the kingdoms can actually still get a ring badge on with 10 hours left. Now, considering I was kind of slating this season not so long ago for being pretty slow and pretty boring, the fact that it stayed alive for so long, it's been pretty insane this last week or so, to be honest. There's been a lot of sleepless nights for people, lots of stuff going on. There is a lot of armies. Last night was almost insane, to be honest. There were so many armies moving around Dol Guldur. It was a great advert for the game, to be perfectly honest. And I still think this now is a great advert for the game, that with 10 hours to go in a server, anything can happen to a degree. Do I think we'll win from this point? No, I don't. But I'll be honest, I didn't really expect us to from where we're at now anyway, to be perfectly honest. So that was that. I'm going to very briefly go into gear changes that I've made. And I've changed quite a lot of gear, actually, I think, from the last video. And I'll go through some reports to show that. So Dane is back to my attack helm, to be honest. I think with Dane it suits better. Possibly with Bjorn, the command helm might be able to work a little bit better. With Dane, I think he needs this, particularly with me having the drums of Barad-dûr. Makes him quite tanky. He's doing really good damage at the moment. Can I actually stand pot? I can stand pot again, winning. Okay. So that's kind of, I've put Dane's gear back as it was. Saruman's gear is still the same. I was going to change this to agility, but I've actually found a way around that with a troop, which is protecting me quite nicely at the moment. So we'll kind of go into that afterwards. Gandalf stayed the same. And then the one major change that I've made really was I went for, which is a bit rogue, I suppose. I've gone for the full refined Hunter's Guide over the Cask of the Submerged Isle with 1 refine. So I've basically taken 50 extra command, but I have removed roughly 42 defense. So I get a little bit higher reduction from elemental damage now, which is quite nice. It doesn't stick a scale all that well, even though I'm now over 700 command. The scaling on that 50 command isn't great. So I've added the protection set also. It gives me another 5%. Just trying to make up for that unit defense difference. I'm currently playing without a tank, and I'm going to show you that in a moment, just while I trial something. And I'll go through the theory of that. But realistically, I'd quite like to get half trolls on Sauron, potentially, and see if I can get more damage out of him now, because I've got a bit more command, so I should be able to get this sort of increased troop damage from him. Other commander levels are at 47, 48, something like that, 47s across the board. Not had to do too much work with the B team, if I'm being honest. And I did rescale my Sauron. I was having 10 points in Gorthar and 9 points in the Deceiver. I've actually gone the other way now, and I think I've found like sort of varying results. I'm still using the half and half on Gandalf the White, because I do think this extra little proc of getting rid of White Council's really helping. It's only 1 extra hit, but I think it's really helping making sure that it's clean for Dane. my round 3 damage, and I'll kind of show you that in a minute. It's pretty disgusting. As you can see, I died. We'll probably go into said report straight away. So this is the first one. I don't know what JP's like. It looks like he's using some 1.0 gear. And we'll probably touch on this report to start with. So JP, I'd massively outgear him, to be perfectly honest. Although that's a really nice Galadriel. So that's that one. And then I actually lost an AJ who is running quite an expensive troop comp, but thrashed me there, to be honest. This comes back to my troop comp, which I'm quite liking at the moment. I mean, that's not actually a bad result for me, but hey, can't really afford to be losing that many troops at the minute, so there you go. I'm using Woses at the moment on Saruman, and I would actually like to use Woses on both Saruman and on Dane, but I cannot, because I can't train them fast enough, because some geniuses decided to only unlock Woses yesterday after I had basically fought it across the map to try and find a Woses camp, so there you go. But the reason why we're using these is they've got pretty steady HP. They've got fairly okay base defense as well, but the most important part is they're still taking away a little bit of White Council because they're using this 20% poison damage. And the main part is ambush tactics, which gives you a 100% chance to gain initiative for the first 4 rounds. And I'm going to show you how that works in some battle reports in a moment, and how it really works quite well on DDs. It solved a lot of my problems. The other good thing is they are a ranged unit, so you don't take normal attacks, which is why I'm currently playing without a tank. 1, because it's cheap just to keep spamming out Guardians, but 2, mainly, to be perfectly honest, because I don't need a tank if I'm running ranged, because the skill, normal attacks can't target ranged units until the melee units are dead. So in effect, I'm basically creating the troll taunt. It's a little bit like the theory that I had at the start of the season, so interesting to say the least. I'm just going to try and reinforce from somewhere. I don't know where I've actually got units left. We'll probably go for that, and then I'll switch something else in. I think I've still got some other stuff left. Barracks probably isn't great at this stage, if I'm being honest. Although we'll have a quick look at the barracks before we go into these battle reports. And I'm going to try and talk through why the Woses are working quite well. Or at least I think they're working quite well. So the Barrett situation currently is 89k. Not bad with a few hours left in the server. I will train a few more Guardians just for fun. The other great thing about Woses is they're actually really cheap, which is quite good. So the comp that I'm running at the moment is actually a really, really cheap comp. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, I don't know if any of these are timed out or not. I can't remember when the last time this was. So we're just going to go through from start to finish, I would say. That was JP again. So this was quite a nice hit. Kyle runs a quite nice troop comp. This was before when I was down to 3 Guardians. So this was when I was still running my old gear set with the half agility cask and the Lang. And I think Dane was back to just running might here. I kind of like played around and eventually fell back onto what I started the season with. So I was quite happy with that. But Kyle runs a pretty cool troop comp. He's actually used the new comp quite nicely as well since then. He runs it with full Bjornins pretty much, and it's pretty nice. It's done some good numbers against some good people. I don't know if I saved the reports or not. If I did, I'll have a look at them in a minute. So that was quite a nice report. Kyle's actually a really good guy as well. Always in well chat, always laughing. So gotta love that kind of stuff, really. I was pretty happy with this. Again, really sort of decent gear and respect levels. My Dane's probably a little bit higher than that, to be fair, but I was pretty happy with this considering I'm running. There's a unit count on a couple of these as well, so that was nice. I think this is Dane still with the might set. And I did like the might set. I did like the extra initiative that I was getting as well, but I fell on the unit defense in the end because I got sick of dying. That was kind of where I was at. And you can see from here, so even though Dane doesn't need masses of rounds to do enough damage, it's nice to try and keep him alive a little bit more. So a little bit of unit defense was pretty helpful. I think this might have been the last fight I had with Dane without unit defense. And the sort of Dane-Bjorn debate really still rumbles on. I found, and I'll kind of come into it, I think, when I go through to these parts of the report. So I found that in general, Dane wasn't the one killing me with madness. It was actually Saruman, and he was getting caught a lot by Bjorn, which was what led me to the Woses. So Ragnar's got a really nice formation. Z1 Sauron, Z1 Gandalf the White. Respect 12 Bjorn, very nice Bjorn as well. And a respect 13 Saruman. Need that unique in there though, Ragnar, I'd say. I was still using the tier 2 bow knights on Saruman at this point. I do think they're great for getting some damage out of him. I was still using the Might Cask. Survivability wise, Dane does okay with that, I find, particularly if he hits hard enough early. But another nice fight. Then we've had an AJ I've just actually lost to. So this is when I was full against an AJ. Again, pretty expensive comp, but nice combo stuff. Still running the Might Helm here. I think I may have switched. I've still got the same set here as well, so this must have been a few days ago. But AJ's formation is actually really nice. 3 refined Saruman. Z6 Gandalf the White. And a really nice Bjorn. I was pretty happy with that. Woodmen have turned out to be a really nice looking unit this season as well. This evade is quite nice. And also this sort of 10% defense stat of the target and normal attacks a 50% chance to reduce the target's defense stat by 2 for 1 round when they're including dwarves. Pretty much all comps include dwarves in main warfare, so it was nice to see Woodman. Good starting position, I think, from Lame, to be honest, to do that. Tell Vesey still talks to most of them, I reckon, mainly by the amount of Galadriels that are around. I always get whacked by Jeffers, but not normally to this extent. And this is where I started messing around with gear, I think. Yeah, I think this was the last fight where I pretty much had enough. Everything went wrong in this fight. So this led me to think, how do I solve this issue? So I'd already thought about Agility Saruman because I wanted to go first with Saruman. Gives me an extra go of trying to get Madness on Bjorn on round 4. Also, I found that he gets Madness a lot by Bjorn in that round. So it basically meant then that the only thing that could Madness my Saruman was Sauron from the end of round 3. So I was trying to think, how do I do it? And I was going to test just doing it by using some hammers and going for a full agility set. In this fight, round 4, I'm pretty sure I just absolutely get marmalised. There you go. So round 4, no one from my team actually hit the other formation, which was interesting. What I will say is Jeffers is a sick puppy with his formation, though. And I'll just kind of flick through it quick. I think it deserves it, to be honest. Lame have liked to use a lot of tier 4 units. Obviously, as this war's gone on, they've had to calm it down a little bit. But yeah, they do like to use them. This was a nice fight versus Wreck. I'm still rocking the Might Helm there. Really nice formation. The great thing about this season was it's great to be able to test where I sit with my formation and how that works. Really nice Irma, by the way. I was pretty happy with that result using tier 2s and Guardians. I do like a Guardian still. I still think they're a great unit. Using them on Dane pretty much keeps him alive. I don't know if I'd made the change here. It's still the same. So I actually had more fights like this than I thought. But yeah, nice Gandalf the White. He's gone for the command, I would say, there with the Iron Basenet. Really nice King of Men, to be fair. I'm running it slightly different to how Lame normally run it. Normally Lame go into the heal. So it's nice to see a damage King of Men. Really nice Sauron. Only respect 4, but the gear's nice. And then a really nice Saruman too. So this guy's obviously clearly trying to come across to a meta that he can get across to. Interesting formation with the Seafarers and the Woodmen. I'm trying to think now where I actually changed. I must have changed at some point. I must have somehow dropped some reports in here, I guess. Same guy, slightly different reports. Still using the tier 2s on Saruman at this stage. I really struggle with Nalani. And there's a reason for that. Obviously, I am pretty cheap in my formation, but Dane kicking out 215k. Really happy with this result. Normally, I die to probably 3k left on Nalani, if I'm honest. But Dane really did kick out some damage here, to be fair. And that's a really expensive comp that Nalani's got, but generally does wipe me, to be honest. There's probably 4 or 5 people who actually wipe me on the server consistently, and Nalani's one of them. Lild 33. Again, nice formation. I'd still had trolls at this stage as well. What's basically happened in the last couple of days is that I've run out of trolls and I've just not been able to replace them. I think I actually wrote in here when I did actually switch gear. LX Expert is a fan. So I said I'd meet him for a fight, and this is how it turned out. Nearly got me, to be fair. Always nice to see people reaching out, say hello. I do appreciate the fact that people do that. Be a really nice formation, couple of tier 4s in there, and definitely nearly got me. Dane still rocking the might set there, so I found that the attack helm definitely pumped out my damage, and Dane was still surviving. So that was kind of where I was at with that. I've sort of settled on, for now at least, until I get better command helmets, I'm going to stick with the attack. Levitating Bear. Again, I was using Dane here with Rams. I got some Rams left over, so I just thought, why not? The annoying thing about this is I'd probably been better off with Guardians in this fight, because I'd have got the counter on Bjorn. But never mind, came out all right. Both DDs were dead though, so theoretically I would have lost that draw pretty extensively. But looks nice on paper, and that's quite an expensive formation to run, so I was pretty happy with that. Always nice to see a Kirin, so I thought I'd drop this in here. Again, I was pretty happy with this. This is a pretty well-respected Kirin with full refine unique, which is quite nice. I mean, you know, if you've got something like a chariot on there, I imagine that's absolutely disgusting. I was pretty happy with this just because of the resources, and I thought I'd drop it in just for the simple fact that, one, I like half trolls doing 81k, and two, always nice to see a Kirin. You don't see many of them anymore, but when you do, it's nice. People play them now for the stun. I purposely had this fight, and I'm going to tell a little bit of a different part of the story here as well. So I'm sure Bill won't mind me saying that Bill is actually retiring from the game as of tomorrow, I would probably guess, because it's the last day today. So Bill's been a great servant to the game, great servant to Honk. Honk in general, to be honest, love them or hate them, they're a fun team and they're very active. But Bill's been a big part of that for a very, very long time, and I know they're all absolutely gutted to see Bill go. It kind of stuffed us when he announced that he was going, so we were actually pushing quite nicely. And then this is the whole thing about human emotion. What really frustrates me is you know, you tell a good story, people do get behind it. And Bill announced that he was obviously retiring to the entire team, and then their activity just skyrocketed, and they pretty much kicked us out of Dol Guldur in about 3 hours, so that set us back a couple of days. But it was nice to see a load of for Bill thoughts popping up, and he'll be sorely missed in the game. I think his account will live on, which is nice. Hopefully it will still be called Bill, or at least for Bill. That'd be nice. But all joking aside, and all the stuff that's gone on this season, it's sad to see people who have been a real stalwart for the game and long-term leaders for people leaving teams. So good luck, Bill, and I hope you come back at some point in the future. Moving on with the fights then. So I think I'm still on Might here. I must have got bored of using Might in the end. I really didn't think I'd had this many fights with it. I think I was just testing around. What's been quite nice is I have tested quite a lot of stuff in the last week or so, which has sort of set me on to what I want to do next season. Apollo, really, really nice formation. I hate losing to a Gil formation at the best of times, but resource-wise, I've done pretty well there. I know I talk about resource wins a lot, but it's because I just think if your formation doesn't work with a low resource army, then, I don't know, it's hard to sort of sustain that in long wars. Turin, beat Turin. This is where I switched to Woses. So did I actually write that down? You'd think I'd have wrote that down, that I actually switched to Woses at this point. So apparently not. This will also mean that Sauron's gear change happened. So Trolls are still staying as alive. Woses were doing pretty decent damage. They were dying still, but doing pretty decent damage. Like, Turin isn't a slouch of an account in any way, shape or form. You know, I'm running into a couple of counters, but then also some high HP in Bjorn. And what I've found with my formation, and this is where my head goes with the Dane Bjorn debate, and I'll try and show you, because I think this fight showcases it quite nicely. So, and I'll also talk through the tank afterwards. round 3 for me is a really, really big round now because I clear White Council so fast. So Dane and Saruman, to a degree, take a big chunk. So this is before Bjorn's gone off as a nuke in round 4. I'm already doing quite a substantial amount of damage in round 3. That if you play in the Bjorn formation, it's highly unlikely you're going to play it with Dane. You don't get that nuke in round 3. You do get your nuke in round 4, which is what this is, right? But what I will say about the nuke in round 4 is that because I'm using Dane and Saruman and getting Saruman to hit heavy and early because of the Woses, so the Woses give him initiative for the first 4 rounds, so he acts first in the first 4 rounds. So what happens is I tend to kind of balance out the damage from a Bjorn anyway, so I'm actually gaining a round's worth of damage on Bjorn, and this is why I still continue to like Dane over Bjorn in these formations, because I've managed to find a way of kind of balancing that damage out. You can do that anyway, but the likelihood is, unfortunately, one of Dane or Saruman tend to get maddened in round 4, which then compounds your issue a little bit more. But if you can act before Bjorn, happy days. You've only then got to deal with Dane. And if I could have trained enough Woses, I would have done Dane and Saruman, both with Woses, if I'm being honest. But I just couldn't train enough in time to do this kind of testing. But initially, I know some other people have been using them. That effect in the first 4 rounds is really nice, and I found Saruman's anomalies in general went down quite substantially, or it went into rounds where it didn't necessarily matter so much anymore because I'm killing people a little bit earlier in the fight. The other thing about this, and like I talked about earlier on, interesting to see the amount of damage and how it splits. So because the way that trolls tank, right? So if you're facing a Bjorn army, so let's just go for the trolls here. So your trolls, the taunt is the first 3 rounds, right? And it's only for normal attacks anyway. So you pull in a few attacks into your tank. I say a few. I could work it out. You pull in 12 attacks into your tank, in effect, right? But from round 4, when Bjorn's nuke goes off, there is no protection for your formation anymore using a troll. So even though I like them, I found when I started looking at damage spread, which the new reports kind of show, I was noticing that they were dying faster than Guardians. Even with sort of 700 command versus, Dane's got 50 command or whatever it might be. I can probably check that actually rather than being lazy. So Dane's got 60 command, Saruman, and his Woses has 172 command. Gandalf has less unit defense, but pretty substantial amount of command with Guardian, so it's quite easy to sort of look across, and they tend to level it out. So what I created was, by having ranged, you create this taunt effect anyway. Is the theory, because they can't hit the range unit while they've still got melee troops in the army. So apart from with skill damage, this is normal attacks. So I'm kind of debating whether you actually need a troll up front. And obviously it's been cheap and cheerful today, but this is when I still had a few trolls left. Again, if I look at the damage spread, pretty comparable. Dane's got hardly any command. He's got 40 unit defense, fair enough, but he took the same sort of amount of damage, and for the cost, it's not bad at all, really. Whereas Gandalf took a third of the damage, lost hardly any troops, probably a little bit under a quarter. So I started to kind of build this picture of, do I really need a troll? And this was a really nice win as well. The Super Saiyan accounts are pretty big. The other one's slightly bigger than this, but I was pretty happy with that as a result. And Saruman was putting out good damage. I must have run out of Woses again here. So this was the fight that kind of tipped me off to Woses, this guy here. So what I found was I was trading frustratingly badly against him, apart from this one where I put the counter on and Dane absolutely trashed him. But it's because he was going first with both his damage dealers, and I was just getting hit by madness constantly over and over and over again on my DDs. So it led me to also use some Woses. Obviously, again, Swan Knights, protections for the first 3 rounds, so you're still not really getting anything from protecting yourself from Bjorn by having the tank anyway, with so many Bjorns knocking around now. So that was that. This was a good result with Woses again. So again, this is after they'd actually got the unit buff. So full refined Legolas, can't complain about that. Z11 Dane, Z1 Gandalf the White. So I'm heavily outgunned in this, really and truthfully. But reality is, it was making it so that I wasn't maddening myself so much and things like that. So I suppose there is no Bjorn in this formation, but it was nice to see. I had gone back to Perseverance at this stage as well. And the new gear seems to be holding up okay. The trolls have got a little bit more squishy, which is a bit frustrating, but it was working out okay. And then there's been a few more fights where I've been pretty happy with what Wozers have done. This is where I switched to 3 rows of Guardians. The damage is pretty balanced across the 3. It was a nice fight. Again, using Wozers again. 3 lots of tier 4 and a troll unit on Gil. And a little bit under-leveled, granted, but again, I was pretty happy with that. I'm not saying it's, let's not play a tank, but to be fair, it's worked out okay so far. There's been a couple of fights where I've been absolutely trashed, but a lot of them like this. Again, really, really nice victories. Heroes account's really nice. You could say it's a slightly off meta comp. There's no Bjorn in there. There is a Dane in there, but I was impressed with what I was doing, and the Guardians were staying alive better than the Trolls, but the damage was also kind of filtering across all my formations anyway, because most damage comes from skill damage, so do we really need the taunt is probably my point. Again, decent damage from Dane and Saruman. This guy's account, again, no slouch. This actually led to people saying in World Chat, what have you done differently? What's changed? It's working really well. So, the gear changes I'd made, I think, have kind of helped a little bit. I like the increased command. I get a little bit more troop damage, like I say, from Sauron's formation. So if I can get half trolls in there, I think that'll be quite nice. This is Tarnip's B team, but again, I'm not disappointed with this. So Dane didn't live very long. I think he only did about 6 rounds here, probably something like that. And I think one of the Durin's Bloods got stunned, so I needed round 7 really. But even though this is Tarnip's B team, it's not really like a B team. So from a resource point of view and everything that was going on in this fight, I was pretty happy with that. Nice see Dane doing 180k even if it is against me. I then hit a full bird army, and I got trashed to be fair, but resource-wise, I've done okay. This formation seems to struggle slightly now with evasion. I just need to test that a little bit more. Some of my results where I felt they're not quite as consistent now have been against evasion, and I would probably hazard a guess it's because Saruman's damage is coming in before the evasion a little bit, so probably takes his number down a touch. I'll have to keep an eye on that and just try and be transparent. And then the last one is this one. Again, really happy with this. Like I say, those woes is going first. No tank in the army again, but using Guardians to good effect. This is also Outlaws B team, but it's a nice B team. I haven't hit his A team yet. I just need to hit a few more people, to be honest. And I'm sure I'll get a chance throughout the day. But I was pretty impressed with all those. It would appear that my reinforcements died again while on the way, which is why we always use transport. Robin, of all people. Oh, I mean, 2-2-2, my reinforcements. Thanks, Robin. I tell you what, I won't reinforce like that again. I'll show everyone how to transport troops. That sounds like a good idea. So I'm just going to clear my apothecary for probably the 900th time today. Something like that. And we're going to use these. Get those woses back and those troops. And we're going to refill from the fort, which we've already filled. Like so. No, that's the fort. I can't refill from the fort. Sigh. Okay, well, we're going to refill as much as we can from the fort. Then we're going to hit transport. Then we're going to fetch Frodo and Sam or Merry and Pippin. And we're going to stick 4,000 woses in the fort. See, I've still got some Swan Knights left just in case of real rainy days. We're going to do that, I think. In fact, I'm going to put some Cav Archers in there because I could probably do with using slightly less Guardians at some stage in the near future because I don't have many left. I have got some troops in forts, though. I'll just see if we're still standing. It looks tight. we are still standing at the Fell Fort. So I can't see this lasting, but there is a lot of armies there at the moment. A lot of chaos going on. Obviously, Hunk and Bear want a Fell Fort back to try and take the ring. We're trying to hold. They need to have a Fell Fort within the next 4.5, 5 hours, I think, really, to have a shot at the ring, because I think they can speed it up a little bit. But interesting, to say the least. And I think there's a 15-minute timer on Dol Guldur now, so chaos all the same. But that is my last season update review. I will do a season recap. I will hopefully get to speak to some leaders, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of salt flying around after the last few days and the last few weeks. But in the end, even though I was very bored of it a few weeks ago, it's been a great season. I think in the end, when everyone reflects on it, for a 3 Kingdom season, it's been pretty exciting. And to have less than 10 hours left and still have all results possible, we've been very fortunate the last few seasons to have ones like that. So great fun. As always, in the meantime, play around your formations. The new commander looks pretty solid for troop damage formations. I need to do a little bit more work around that. But in the meantime, if in doubt, always follow your nose.